Hello, and welcome to today's daily study. Thank you so much for joining me. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the opposition that Paul faced during his time with kind of the other religions that were around during that day. One of the biggest problems that a lot of people face when teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ is indeed the religious views of others. People who have grown up believing so strongly in certain things that it is very hard for them to give up what they're doing in order to pursue Jesus Christ. And one of the biggest things about Rome and Greece and those areas is they had a lot of religions. And of course, it was kind of centralized a little bit in the fact that all of the gods came from the same pantheon, but they were very much varied in their worship and rites and ordinances that they performed in these other religions. And so the way that you worshipped the goddess Athena was different than the way you would worship Zeus. The way that you worship Zeus is different than the way you would worship Diana, which is who we're talking about here. And so there were so many different religions here. And we know kind of why Paul said, hey, I believe that, or I see that you guys are too superstitious. In other words, you're too religious. You have so many religions and stuff like that, so many gods. And it's hard to really keep track of where you guys are. But the biggest problem here is that these gods were physical things. They were made of gold, they were made of silver. And it was believed that these gold and silver representations of gods had some power, had the ability to influence things. And so people would worship them, and they believed that the gods whom they represented had endowed them with certain bits of power. And so we see kind of this method in which a lot of people who maybe were more atheistic and non believing of anything found a way to kind of take advantage of that. And so here we're learning about a guy named Demetrius. And so it says, and the same time there arose no small stir about that way. So where Paul and Timotheus and Erastus and everyone was staying for that time, there came to be a pretty big insurrection, basically. For a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, which made silver shrines for Diana, brought no small gain unto the craftsmen. So, in other words, there was this guild of silver craftsmen that were building shrines to Diana. And Diana was, of course, a goddess. And one of the important was the fact that she was the goddess of fertility, she was the goddess of the hunt, the goddess of chastity. This goddess, like, she was well known. She was known as Artemis to the Greeks and Diana to the Romans. But the worship of this particular goddess brought no small gain to the craftsmen, to this guild of people who were making shrines for them, whom he called together with workmen of like occupation. So people who were building shrines to other gods, and said, sirs, you know that by this craft we have our wealth. So in other words, by making these shrines, we're getting all of our money. And yet, moreover, ye see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Paul hath persuaded and turned away much people, saying that they be no gods which are made with hands. In other words, they're saying that what we're creating has no power and has no ability. And so this teaching is going to interfere with our ability to make money off these people who believe that the things that we create, that these silver and gold statues and shrines are going to help them and benefit them. But they're teaching that they have no power. So that not only this, our craft is in danger to be set at naught. So in other words, people are no longer going to want our stuff, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. So in other words, this temple that we have is no longer going to be in use, in which everyone knows that Diana is this important goddess. And when they heard these sayings, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And the whole city was filled with confusion. And having caught Gaius and Aristarchus, men of Macedonia, Paul's companions in travel, so these were people who Paul was traveling with, that this mob of people were able to capture, they rushed with one accord to the theater. And so the theater was for the Greeks as the Colosseum was for the Romans. That was an area in which they had plays and activities and all this other stuff. So they rushed into this theater. And when Paul would have entered in unto the people, the disciples suffered him not. So, in other words, people were holding Paul back because Paul wanted to go into the theater and talk to this mob, but the people begged him not to go. Like they forcefully stopped him from going. And certain of the chief of Asia, which were his friends, sent unto him, desiring that he should not adventure himself into the theater. So other people who Paul was friends with and who knew of Paul and were in positions of somewhat authority just asked Paul to stay out of it at this particular point. Some therefore cried one thing, and some another, for the assembly was confused, and the more part knew not wherefore they were come together. So, in other words, so many people were there, and not all of them knew exactly why they were there. But when they knew that he was a Jew, all with one, or no, sorry, and they drew Alexander out of the multitude, the Jews putting him forward. So the Jews that were with these people put Alexander forward, knowing that Alexander was a follower of Paul and a disciple of Paul. And Alexander beckoned with the hand and would have made his defense unto the people. But when they knew he was a Jew, all with one voice about the space of 2 hours cried out, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And so they were yelling for 2 hours above this guy's ability to speak, this chant that Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And when the town clerk had appeased the people, so a town clerk had to come in and calmed everyone down, said, Ye men of Ephesus, that or what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of Ephesians is a worshipper of the great goddess Diana, and of the image which fell down from Jupiter? In other words, Diana came down, or Artemis came down from Zeus and blessed this particular city, and we worship her, of course. So who doesn't know that? Seeing then that these things cannot be spoken against, ye ought to be quiet and do nothing rashly. In other words, you know these things to be true, so you shouldn't be worried about the things that these people are saying, and especially don't act out of like passion. Don't act out of your haste. Here it says, do nothing rashly. Think about what you're doing, he's saying. For ye have brought hither these men, which are neither robbers of churches, nor yet blasphemers of your goddess. In other words, they haven't gone into your church and taken anything, and they haven't spoken against Diana. Wherefore, if Demetrius and the craftsmen which are with him have a matter against any man, the law is open, and there are deputies. Let them implead one with another. In other words, Demetrius and this guild of craftsmen, if they're angry with these guys and they have a reason to suspect that they've broken the law, let them bring him to the judges. And the judges will decide whether or not these people are guilty or not. But if ye inquire anything concerning other matters, it shall be determined in a lawful assembly. In other words, don't do anything without perfectly legal action. For we are in danger to be called in question for this day's uproar, there being no cause whereby we may give an account of this concourse. And when he had thus spoken, he dismissed the assembly. In other words, he's saying here that Rome is going to hear about this, and what are we going to tell them? Like, these guys haven't spoken against our gods, they haven't robbed our churches, which, again, Rome was very lenient towards the religions of others. They allowed every place that they conquered really to kind of worship their own way, and they didn't really interfere in the worship of the individuals as long as those individuals didn't interfere with the worship of Rome and Rome's god and Rome's gods and Rome's basically pantheons, in which is saying here, if they were to ask us what's going on, we couldn't really tell them because there's no reason. These guys didn't do anything wrong. And the big problem with this is that Rome had a very strong tendency of reacting violently to uprisings, so violently that they would kill off whole groups of people. They would burn cities. Uprising was not allowed. And so in this case, they're like, you guys are putting us in danger, for we are in danger to be called in question for this day's uproar. And from there, he dismissed the assembly. Again, another example of Heavenly Father preparing and putting people in the way. This particular town clerk who was put in this place to help the followers of the travel companions of Paul to be able to escape this particular predicament. Like, he was part of the people. He knew what to say. Yes, maybe he wasn't ready to hear the word of the Lord at that time, but the Lord had prepared him to help his other children in whatever way that person could indeed help the children of the Lord. And we see that in so many cases, and this is just yet another example of that. And here we see kind of like this opposition that the early church had, that the early Christians had when it came to teaching the word of Christ to these Gentile nations, and that when they interfered with their gods or possibly their means of procuring money, that's when they started to turn violent and go against these preachers of Christ, especially because, as preachers of Christ, they were teaching that these other gods didn't have power, and that the word of the Lord was free, that you didn't need to pay for it. Whereas, especially like in the ancient Roman societies, you would at least have to pay for a wooden statue of a god or goddess to pray to in order to bless your house and whatnot. So there was always finances being exchanged, and or for worship, or at least for worship by oneself. And yet here were these people claiming that, hey, we're children of God, that you don't need to have these unknown gods, these unknown powers over you, that the Lord is Christ, that he saved us from our sins, and that through faith on his name, we can all become one family with our Heavenly Father. That was upsetting to them because it took away from their financial gain. And we see a lot of that in our modern societies, in which financial gain is prized above all else, or personal gain, whether it be financial or otherwise, is prized above all else. And we see here that these people took the goddess Diana and they created an uproar just because somebody was teaching that Jesus is Christ, that Christ himself would save his people. And so we see kind of this opposition, and how sometimes if we get a little bit occupied with our own personal interests, whether it be financial or otherwise, that sometimes we can truly miss an opportunity to learn greater things and to become greater than we are. Once again, wealth is nothing in the eyes of the Lord. Wealth, it's not going to buy your way into heaven. And the Lord can grant wealth to whom he sees fit. Again, the Lord himself has talked about the fact that God is the one who put the kings on their thrones, and yet they say, I have done this myself. And it's like, that's not true. The Lord is the one who gives these blessings, and it's up to us to be grateful and thankful for the blessings that the Lord gives to us. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope very much to speak with you tomorrow.